Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Ascent Bible Church, to tonight's Bible study. John couldn't be here tonight, so he asked if I would step in for him. So, of course, I said no, but he wouldn't take no for an answer. But that's all right. I'll forgive him. So, for tonight's study, we're going to be in the book of Judges. And we're going to be looking probably at one of the most famous characters in this book. Can anybody guess who that might be? There we go. Samson, yeah. And I think it's kind of fitting for tonight, especially with what's going on around us, with the agendas that are being pushed upon us, in today. So I thought tonight would be a good time to talk about Samson and some of the struggles that he went through. I believe that, to understand the book of Judges, we need to understand the last sentence in this book of Judges. And that's chapter 21, verse 25. So if you'll go with me there, it says, "In those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes." Isn't that kind of interesting? That way back then, this is being said about the people. And if we look at ourselves today, look at what's going on today, we look around us. Everyone is doing what we feel is right in our own eyes. So mark those words. Not only are they the key to this book, but this is the key to human nature. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes, not that which was wrong. And I think that's, the problem is man's idea of what's right is the exact opposite of what God says it is. So every man did what was right in his own eyes. So that's kind of what we're going to be looking at tonight. Let's look at Proverbs 14:12. Proverbs 14:12 says, "There is a way which seemeth right unto man, but the end thereof are the ways of death." See, we don't have a clue what's going on. And if we think we know what's right, we're deceiving ourselves. So we need to be careful there. Judges in chapter 2, verse 11, and also in 3:7, verse 12, chapter 4, verse 1, chapter 6, verse 1, chapter 10, verse 6, and chapter 13, verse 1, it all says the same thing right there. "And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord." So keep this in mind as we continue here tonight. 2 Timothy 2:20, Paul talks about the vessels unto dishonor. And in the book of Judges, it's about believers that basically sold out, and how they just from selling out, they just kind of spiraled down. See, that can happen to us as we start to move away from God's word and not believe it. Then we can start. That'll be the downfall for us. That's where we can start to spiral down. That's where things will start to come into our lives, and deception comes in, and all these other things that we get attacked with. So, biblically, we all have that potential of spiraling down, and I believe it's vital that we learn the practical, spiritual lessons of this book, of the book of Judges. In Romans 15:4, it tells us, "For whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the Scriptures might have hope." See, so the Bible was written for us to be able to learn, to be able to understand, to be able to see the mistakes that were made before us. So from there we can learn and we can understand what God has for us. So that brings us to tonight's teaching. Overcoming failure. I call it overcoming failure because we'll be in the book of Judges. We'll be talking about Samson, and we'll be talking about some of the failures that he had. And I believe that it's failures that many times we can all fall into, or maybe have fallen into. What makes a man strong? I mean, we all want to be known as strong as we speak of men, right? We all want to be known as strong in one way or another. And then another question is, do I have what it takes to be strong? See, during this time in Judges, the Israelites were going through a cycle. They would serve the Lord, and then they would fall into sin, into idolatry, and then they would get enslaved, and then they would cry out to the Lord, and God would, raise up a judge and have them delivered, and then they would repeat the pattern again. So all through Judges, all through the Old Testament, they were up and down, up and down. See, they had no king. They were enslaved by the Philistines, and God calls Samson to deliver them. So this is where Samson comes in. He was one of the 12 judges that was used in the book of Judges. Have you ever wondered what Samson looked like? I think they're going to put a picture up, if they can, of one of the movies where it showed, this big, strong, muscular guy, with a ripped body, maybe a bodybuilder. I think he was more like John, like Pastor John or Pastor Larry or maybe Pastor Mike Adetta. I think he was more like them. Because if you think of somebody like this, with the way they're built and they look strong, it's easy to believe what he did, what he was able to accomplish in the Bible. But if you look more like me or Pastor Mike, and we did something miraculous, something physical, then we would have to say that came from God. That wasn't from us. So if he looked like this, he could have done probably everything that the Bible said he did. But if he was more like us, because the Bible doesn't describe his physical characteristics. So he could have been just a plain old person like God used, many times in the Bible. So, whatever he looked like, there's one key phrase that we're going to see many times. And every time that he did something great, this phrase comes out. And that phrase is, "And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him." See, Samson was strong because God's Spirit came upon him. Now, a lot of the movies and misconceptions out there is that his hair is what made him strong. And that's what gave him the power. But this Spirit that it says came upon him, that's the exact... I'll be getting to those verses in a while. Sorry. This is kind of my intro. Sorry about that. And I think it's 14:6. So it's this exact same Spirit that came upon Samson and gave him his power. That's the exact same Spirit that we have in us, that we can call when we need the power, when we need the direction. So let's look at Acts chapter 1, verse 8. I'll have to read it here on the monitor. It says, "But ye shall receive power after that the Holy Ghost is come upon you. See, we have that same exact ability that Samson had to draw on power, the Holy Spirit that's within us. So, what's our downfall? We think that we're weak. And I think a lot of times we're taught and we're led to that direction, that we're weak, that we don't have what it takes. So faith is kind of cut off from us. So this misconception in the story of Samson, what made him weak was when he cut off his hair. See, power wasn't in his hair. The power wasn't built in his hair. He was dedicated to the Lord. He was a Nazarite. And he had a vow, and this vow set him apart. He was consecrated or devoted. Nazarite basically means consecrated or devoted, untrimmed. Let's look at number 16. It kind of gives us a definition of what a Nazarite is. Number 16:1. Sorry. Unless I wrote the wrong one down, 16:1. Let me do this. I think I have it here. Sorry. Number 16, verse 21. It says, "This is the law of the Nazarite who hath vowed, and of his offering unto the Lord for his separation, beside that his hand shall get." So this is the law of the Nazarite who hath vowed, and of his offering unto the Lord for his separation. So that's the definition of a Nazarite. So again, the power wasn't in his hair, because he was, from the time of his birth, even before he was born, he was dedicated to the Lord. And that meant committing to three things: not to drink of the vine, so not to drink wine, not to touch dead things, and not to cut his hair. So the point here is the power didn't come from his hair. So, because if that were the case, how many of us, we'd be in trouble. We wouldn't have any strength because a lot of us don't have any hair. So the power did not come from his hair. It was because of his loss of self-control. So what led Samson to lose his strength? It wasn't his loss of hair. It was a loss of his self-control. See, when we lose self-control, any suggestion, any agenda, anything happening out there can affect us, can affect our, looking up to the Lord, looking at the Word. It can affect how we think about things, how we will address things. So, loss of self-control, it was his downfall. See, guys, it doesn't matter how strong we are. It doesn't matter how strong we look at when we go to the gym. It doesn't matter how strong we are on the court, how high we can jump. It doesn't matter, what we can do with an axe, how much wood we can chop. It doesn't matter how strong we are, maybe at the construction site. It doesn't even matter how fast we get up to the top of Baldy. And I won't mention any names there, but his first initial is Diego. But see, it doesn't matter how we perform in all these functions here. See, if we have a loss of self-control, if we have a weak self-control, then we're going to go down. we're not going to have the strength. We're not going to have the ability to function. We're not going to have the ability to fight the temptations that will come against us. Have you ever met a man that, so strong in many ways, leadership and strength, but yet lacks self-control? How about, have you ever met a man that's so strong at work, or maybe, in a hobby that he has, yet he didn't have self-control? Have you ever met a man who maybe at work could lead hundreds of employees, maybe built a multi-million-dollar business, and yet when he gets home and he sits on the couch and can't even lead his kids who are yearning for his attention? What about you women? What about the women? Have you ever met a woman that's so beautiful, yet she lacks self-control, keeps falling for the same type of guys, for the same lies that over and over again? See, the strongest man or strongest woman in the world, will become instantly weak without self-control. Without self-control, there's no strength in us to fight against anything, to argue against anything, to think, through anything. We're too open to suggestion. So let's look at the life of Samson. We're going to start in chapter 14, verse 1. Let's look at the life of Samson. And we're only going to get through 10 verses. So what I'll do is I'll walk you through 3 attitudes that began to creep into Samson's life. So 3 attitudes in his life. And these attitudes were so stealth-like that I don't think he even noticed that they were there. See, and that can happen to us. These same attitudes can just creep into our lives so stealth-like that we won't even know that we're doing something wrong. We won't even know that it's there. So here are the 3 attitudes. First one is, I want it. Number 2 is, I deserve it. Number 3 is, I can handle it. And what are these 3 things? I want it. That's lust. I deserve it. I don't get my needs met. I deserve it. That's greed. That's entitlement. I can handle it. I can handle anything that this world throws at me. That's pride. That's the pride of life. So let's watch how these came clearly out in Samson's life. But, oftentimes in our lives just as well, right? So let's look at verse 1, chapter 14. And Samson went down to Timnath and saw a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. So he goes to a Philistine area, a place where he shouldn't be, right? He had no business going to a Philistine area. And he sees a beautiful woman. See, when we go to a place where we shouldn't be, we're going to start getting bombarded with all kinds of temptations, all kinds of thoughts, and all kinds of images, right? Didn't Jesus say that even thinking about something was a sin? So going to a place where we shouldn't be, and here's Samson at a place where he should not have been. And when he returns home, he says in verse 2, and he came up and told his father and his mother and said, I have seen a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore get her for me to wife. So what he's saying here is, I want it. I want it, I see it, and I want it. He saw a beautiful woman, and that's all he could think about, and he wanted her. What's interesting to me is that he told his parents. He didn't go and ask for advice or what they thought. He went and told them to get her to be his wife. And then the very next verse, verse 3, it says, Then his father and his mother said unto him, Is there never a woman among the daughters of thy brethren, or among all my people, that thou goest to take a wife of the uncircumcised Philistines? See, his parents knew what was going on, and they tried to talk him out of it. And isn't that what we do as parents? You know, if our kids want something that we know isn't good for them, you know, it's our duty to try to talk them out of it, to explain to them, you know, why would you go to this place when everything you need is right here? Why would you drive 300 miles when you can drive into town and buy the same thing, or buy maybe something better? But, you know, they're trying to tell him, you don't want this, you don't need this. You know, she's not a godly woman for you. See, they knew what he was doing, and they were trying to spare him the grief. You know, you young folks out there, have you ever heard your parents or someone tell you that? You know, or maybe us older ones did our parents ever, you know, come out to us and tell us, no, you know, you don't need this. That's not the right person for you. That's not the right job for you. You know, Samson, they're telling him she's not right for you. She's not the right person for you. And the rest of the verse, it says, he tells him, "Go get her for me. Go get her for me, for she pleases me." Other versions say, "For she is right in my eyes." See, this term "right in my eyes," it's big. It's so big. She looks right to me, so I want her. That car looks perfect to me, so I want it. It's the right color. It's got the right size engine. You know, I don't care what anybody else thinks. I want it. So what makes this phrase so big is up until the story of Samson, the Bible always said they did evil in the eyes of the Lord. So up to before chapter 14, it always said they did evil in the eyes of the Lord. And after this story, the story of Samson, the phrase becomes, Israel began to do what was right in their own eyes. They began to look at things the way they wanted to look at them. How many times do we do that? How many times do we see something and think it's right for us? Even in the very last verse of Judges, it says the same thing, that they started to do what was right in their own eyes. Do you feel like, you know, we're in a culture where everything is doing what's right in our own eyes? You know, it's easy to point at people, maybe point at leaders of this state or leaders of our government of this country, and point at them and say that, but, you know, what about ourselves? What about ourselves? Have you ever gotten to a point where something or someone looks so good to you and it looks so right that, you know, you knew it wasn't right, but it was right in your own eyes? And maybe God spoke to you. Maybe God was speaking to you and telling you, you know, that's not right for you. You don't need that thing. You don't need to go there. You don't need that job. You don't need to go to this country. but it looks all right to you. You wanted it so bad. You know, I've been there. I've done that. But I bet all of us can think of a time in our lives where, you know, we did what we thought was right. So what do you do when what's right in your own eyes is not right in God's eyes? Have you ever had somebody tell you, if it feels right, just do it? It's been a long time that I've heard that, but I still hear it. If it's right in your own eyes, do it. Another question, what if you feel today, what if you feel what's right today leads you to do something you regret tomorrow? I've been there too. I've done some, things I thought was right today, and tomorrow I'm regretting it. So, see, that's what happens when we allow this attitude of I want it to drive our lives. So when we allow this I want it, no matter what, no matter the cost, monetarily or with your family or your friends, when you allow that to drive you, then that's when we start to regret it. See, I want it can lead to I regret it. So we need to guard ourselves against that. See, we have to guard ourselves against this attitude, I want it, and it looks right in my eyes. We have to guard ourselves against that. And interesting, this lust, this I want it, was the first attitude to start to dominate Samson's life. The first attitude that started to dominate his life. So that's a warning to us. That's a lesson for us. How something like this can start to dominate our lives. The beginning of, what could be a downfall. So this first attitude is what started to dominate Samson's life. So the second one, let's look at verses 5 and 6 for this second attitude. 5 and 6 says, Then went Samson down and his father and his mother to Timnath, and came to the vineyards of Timnath, and behold, a young lion roared against him. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and he rent him as he would have rent a kid, and he had nothing in his hand, but he told not his father or his mother what he had done. So two things that I saw here. First is the Spirit of the Lord, the strength of the Lord came upon him. And number two is he didn't tell his parents. See, if it would have been me, if I would have done something that miraculous, I'd never stop talking about it. I'd be showing you pictures and selfies, and every opportunity that I'd get, I'd be talking about it. But what's interesting here is, why didn't he tell anybody? Why didn't he even tell his parents? Well, let's look at verses 7 and 8, and I think that'll give us an idea of why. Verse 7 says, And he went down and talked with the woman, and she pleased Samson well. And after a time he returned to take her, and he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion, and behold, there was a swarm of bees and honey in the carcass of the lion. So, isn't that where we kind of get ourselves in trouble? He turned aside. We know where we should be going. We know what we should be doing, but then we turn aside. We turn aside to see what's there. And that's where our trouble starts, when we turn aside. Remember Samson's vow as a Nazirite? Don't touch dead things. So why would he do something he took a vow not to? Why would he do that? And that takes us to the second attitude. I deserve it. That's entitlement, that's greed. I deserve it. I ripped him apart with my own hands. And I deserve to go back and take a look. I deserve to go back and do whatever I want with it. I did this. So what happens when you go somewhere you shouldn't go? Or do something you're not supposed to do because you think you deserve it? See, when you do that, you see something sweet. You see something that catches your eye. And when that happens, you turn aside. You start to walk that way. Something that catches your eye. And that's what happened with Samson. You know, he saw this swarm of bees and honey. And he wanted it. He deserved it because he's the one that killed the lion. And he broke his vow. So what does he do next? Let's look at verse 9. It says, and he took thereof in his hands and went on eating and came to his father and mother. And he gave them, and they did eat. But he told not them that he had taken the honey out of the carcass of the lion. So Samson betrays God right here. See, God is the one who gave him the strength. God is the one who gave him the strength to tear apart this lion. And he did it for a handful of honey. For a handful of honey. You know, how many times have we, disobeyed God's word for a handful of honey? For something that caught our eye. For something that we thought was sweet. See, how dumb is that? Yet, we do this every single day, right? Like Jesus said, even a bad thought is a sin. So that's how easy it is to turn. We can say to ourselves, or we can try and convince ourselves that it's just a look, it's just a few pictures, it's just lunch, with a coworker or maybe an old high school sweetheart, or it's just a one-night stand. But just for a scoop of honey, they gave up everything that's good in their lives. See, we can give up everything that's good in our lives just for a scoop of honey, just for a look, just for a few pictures. See, all because we think we deserve it. All because of our, this greed and the entitlement that we think we are entitled to. So I want it. I deserve it. So that takes us to attitude number 3. And let's go to verse 10 for that. He says, so his father went down unto the woman, and Samson made there a feast, for so used the young men to do. So this might be one of those verses you don't really think much about. But if you look at this word feast, the Hebrew word is mishteh. And if you remember, one of Samson's vows was don't drink, not to get drunk. But this word mishteh literally means hold a banquet of drinking. But if you want to put it in our terms today, that basically means Samson held a kegger. He held a big party and invited all his friends. So why would a man who committed not to drink, not to get drunk, hold a feast. Why would he do that? See, the things Samson thought he could handle were handling him. Because he had this attitude of, I'm strong and I can handle it. These things were handling him. See, the things we think we can handle, those things can end up handling us. And I'm sure we all have, our own stories and our own things that we've gone through. And if you look back, you can, you might realize how these things handled you. You were never in control. I have friends, I have family that thought they could handle alcohol. They thought they were strong enough. And they found out they can't. The alcohol was handling them. So the things we think we can handle, those things can end up handling us. So it started with, I want it, started with lust, went to, I deserve it, I'm entitled to it, it belongs to me, to, I can handle it. Those are the three attitudes that we see here in Samson. The three attitudes that we can see that can make a strong man or a strong Christian weak if we allow these things to come into our lives. So whatever you're going through, something right now, or have been struggling like Samson, remember this. Remember this. We have a God that specializes in making weak men, weak women strong. But I want to end with a positive note. I want to end here with three attitudes that combats these attitudes and makes weak men strong. So let's look at these three attitudes. Number one is, instead of saying I want it, we want to say I'm weak and I need God. It's an attitude of transparency. See, a lot of times we're acting like something we're not. We want to be somebody or something that we're not. And we see those examples all around us. And when we see those, sometimes we want to be that person. And that's not us. That's not how God built us. That's not His plan for us. So sometimes we just want to be something that we're not. We're acting like something we're not. See, we need to have this attitude of transparency. And I speak to the men here tonight because this is an attitude to have. This is an attitude that we need in our lives, to admit that we're weak and we need God. Because a lot of times we don't do that. And I can speak for us men. I can speak for myself because I've been there. That we need to admit that we are weak and that we need God. Have you ever heard this? Has anybody ever told you this? I know I heard this when I first became a Christian, and I was talking to a lot of my friends, and they said, God is just a crutch for the weak. Hey, I'm glad I can lean on God. Hey, He can be my crutch anytime. They're absolutely right. He is a crutch for the weak. Let's look at Ephesians 6:10. Ephesians 6:10 says, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of His might." See, it doesn't say be strong in yourself, or it doesn't say in your mighty power, but it says be strong in the Lord and His power. Because we don't have that power to fight the fight, the spiritual fight that we need to be fighting against. We don't have that power. So attitude number 1, I'm weak and I need God. So all we have to do is admit that we're weak and we need God. Because when we do that, then we're opening that door that we need for God to come in, for God to lead us, to fill us with His Holy Spirit. Attitude number 2, instead of saying I deserve it, we need to be saying I deserve nothing. I deserve nothing. This is called humility. We need to humble ourselves to the point of understanding that we deserve nothing. See, God owes us nothing. But He pleasures in giving us everything that we need, everything that we want. He pleasures in doing that, but we deserve nothing. Look at how Romans 6:23 puts it. It says, "For the wages of sin is death." See, we deserve nothing. But it says, for our sin, we deserve death. See, that's what we deserve. So, this pride, our pride makes us think that we did it all, that we have what it takes. Pride makes us think that we can accomplish anything, that we don't need help from anybody. Pride makes us think that, we can be the smartest person in the world, that we can be the strongest person in the world. See, pride can be so deceiving. But here it says that we deserve nothing. I deserve nothing. And that takes us to, let's look at Proverbs 16:18. Proverbs 16:18. Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Yep. Our pride can take us down. And if we don't tackle that, if we don't address that, pride can take us down. It can set us up for failure. And here's attitude number 3. Instead of saying, I can handle it, I can handle a few picks. I can handle, just going to lunch. I can handle a few clicks on the computer. We need to be saying, I can fall to any sin. We can fall to any sin. And that's called vulnerability. We are vulnerable more than what we think. And pride keeps us from thinking how vulnerable we are. So we need to say, I can fall to any sin. See, as believers, this is probably the one we need to embrace the most in our lives. Knowing that we can fall to any sin. How many people that we have looked up to, even, how many Christians, how many, brothers and sisters in the Lord have we seen that we thought were so strong have fallen to a certain sin? How many have we seen? And if they can fall, we can fall. How many pastors have we seen? And that's why it's important for us to keep our pastors in prayer, because they are getting attacked every day, every minute. So we can fall to any sin. And that's, again, the one that I think we need to embrace. See, without God, we can fall to any sin at any time. God is our stronghold. God is the one that keeps us going. God is the one that can keep us on the path to Him. God is the one that equips us. See, we're not equipped physically or mentally to battle against the wiles of the devil. We're not equipped. spiritually. But that's where God comes in. Because it's not a physical battle. I mean, we can go to the gym and work out and lift the most weights, but that's not going to help us in the spiritual battle. Every day we need to declare dependence on God. Every day. As soon as we wake up, I mean, you've heard John say this, as soon as you get up in the morning, what's the first thing we need to do? Acknowledge God and ask Him to go before us that day. Because we need Him to go before us. It might be just a walk down the road or a trip to the grocery store, but we need Him to go before us. Because we don't know what we're going to see at the store. We don't know if we're going to look to the side, look astray and see something that's going to catch our eye. So we need God to be with us. So self-control. The strongest man or woman isn't the one with the most power, but the one with the most restraint. And where do we get that restraint from? So it's not the one with the most power, but the one with the most restraint. So what are the attitudes that make a weak Christian strong? I'm weak and I need God. I deserve nothing and I can fall to any sin. So if we can understand these things, I think we understand and we'll know that we need God in our lives. We need the power of the Holy Spirit. Just like Samson did when he tore up the lion, and in the other occasions when he battled